Hello and welcome to another YEV. YEV, Alex.
Oh, fuck. Not ready.
Why the hell not? So basically, Alex is out and about. Whereabouts are you, mate?
I am somewhere on the south coast. Haven't on the south coast. I've just finished VW Players. I got held up there, and then met up with somebody who says the same taste in cars. So
the Polo crew.
So obviously one, let alone two together. So
that's good, mate. The reception seems to be better south coast than it does in Wales, which is always a bonus.
Dipping out.
No, you're fine,
Can't
mate.
be worse than last week, surely.
Oh no, yeah. And apologies everyone for last week. I can only blame the internet. Oh no, it'll be fine, mate. It'll be fine. But yeah, today we are going to be talking about, of course, the EV news in the balanced way. Chatting about cars. We can hear you fine, mate. And also the big subject
start, isn't it?
going on, which is obviously what's going on with Elon and Trump. A little bit mad what's going on. We're going to kind of go through the motions with that. So yeah, I thought it'd be a good place to start, just talking about general news out there, because we like to bring people what's going on in the EV universe. Apparently, and I never knew this, that there was a cargo ship that's been on fire. And I don't know if anybody else, I mean, whack it in the comments if anyone's seen this, but apparently there was a cargo ship fire involving EVs. Now, normally, as soon as there's a fire involving EVs, we'll see it everywhere. It'll be plastered everywhere. So either someone's missed the trick, or I haven't obviously been beady eyes on the news recently. But if anyone's seen anything about that, I'd be really interested to see if anyone else has seen it. But apparently it was carrying about 3,000 vehicles, 750 were electric, and it caught fire off the coast of Alaska. So yeah, apparently the crew abandoned ship and letting the fire burn. Apparently lots of explosions and stuff like that. So yeah, not ideal. Before we hit the Elon and the Donald Trump thing, obviously there's been a massive difference in Tesla shares this week for obvious reasons. But like I said, we'll go into that in a second. Apparently there's been a decline in US EV interest recently, which is not surprising with what's going on over there from relaxing the EV laws, the EV pollution laws, etc. And of course, not to mention the fact that they're drilling for oil, that sort of thing. So I think there's obviously a decline, but whether that will change, I don't know. Hi Dean, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for joining in. So there's a couple of other things that are going on. I don't know if anyone heard, but in Bristol, they've got a whole new bus station there with loads of electric cars, which is electric buses. I think something like 76 buses that are there, which I don't know if anyone lives down Bristol way, but that is great to hear. And I don't know if anybody else uses buses. Generally speaking, people that are listening or watching Chargeheads, what have you, are interested in electric cars, so don't often take the bus. But there is so much work going on with electric buses. I went to Nottingham City Council recently, and they've got a load of Yutong buses there, really up to date, LFP batteries, so no cobalt in them, safer, better longevity, yada yada yada. So it does feel that there is so much infrastructure and bigger vehicles getting out there in the main cities, which is obviously great to see. And if anyone is, I think it's in a couple of weeks' time, but there is a massive show called the Road Transport Expo, or RTX for short. And that is going to be focused on HGV. And there's going to be loads of electric HGV there. There's so much going on in the electric HGV market at the moment with ZHID. If you guys don't know, zero emission heavy goods infrastructure demo. So essentially what the government have done, they put £200 million into the infrastructure and grants against these electric trucks. So essentially you can get electric HGV for the price of a diesel one, which is, for certain logistics companies, it is a massive, massive benefit. And the fact that they're going to be getting money off the infrastructure and, of course, the analysis, which is what I do in my 9 to 5 with Dynamon. And if anyone wants to know about the EV simulations and end-to-end EV transition tool that Dynamon do, there is a video on the YouTube channel. So go and check it out if you're interested in how people are using fleet data to electrify or help electrify vans, HGVs in the right way. Because it's all about that balance, you know. There's no point going, oh yeah, we need electric cars, just go and buy them. And then, oh crap, I need to go buy some infrastructure. And then, oh, which routes are we going to put them on? It's just not the way to do it. So yeah, Dynamon, who I work for, they essentially, and there are other companies out there that do it, are using fleet data and doing EV simulations and understanding first, you know, which EVs are the right vehicles to replace like for like, you know, what battery size is going to be optimized, you know, the best fit for purpose, not spending too much on the expenses in terms of total cost, and then, you know, understanding the power and the chargers, etc. Buses are, thanks Roland for commenting, buses are a great idea, smoother, quieter, and no more smelly exhausts, etc. And do you know what? Not only that, but apparently the amount of vibration that a bus driver receives on a normal diesel bus, apparently it's like, it's actually really, really bad for them. So maybe next time, if you go into the pub, or if you know a bus driver, if you ask them if they've gone from, you know, diesel to electric, it'd be interesting to see what they think. But apparently it's a huge difference for the driver as an everyday thing. Just waiting for Alex to jump back online, because unfortunately he seems to have left the chat at the moment. But yeah, I'm really interested in talking about the Elon, and he's back again. You've timed it well, mate.
Is that working?
Working fine, working perfectly. I literally just went through a little bit of the news, and I thought we'd get straight into this fun and games of what's happening with Elon Musk and Trump at the moment. So did you see any of the messages up on X? Did you see what they
It's been quite the fallout. I mean, it was a kind of an inevitable fallout, but yeah, two very big personalities.
I thought they had a stronger innings before it went to, you know, Pete Tong.
Yeah, no, I mean, my take on it was, I always thought it was an odd alliance in that Trump's always been very outspoken about EVs, and obviously Elon's got a vested interest in EVs succeeding. It always seemed like a strange alliance, and yet it kind of worked, and it was kind of okay for a while. It'd be interesting to see what happens with it, I think, really, because it's I mean, Donald Trump's not really, he's been very kind of consistent with kind of rowing back on, here goes the other polo,
There it goes.
About to see it in the background then.
Yep.
Yeah, Donald Trump's been very consistent about the EV thing, generally speaking, in terms of, even though he's been a bit more supportive of it vocally with the whole Teslas on the White House lawn and all that sort of stuff, he's been fairly consistent in trying to kind of row back on the requirements for them and so on. But it's interesting that, so he put out a tweet this week saying that he was removing the you get a federal grant towards buying an EV in the States, and it requires a large amount of the materials and the assembly and so on to take place in the States. So it's very much focused on basically removing, effectively what it does is it removes the price gap versus, say, well, not so much Chinese EVs, but other countries, to try and make sure that you have that expertise in the US.
Yeah.
And it was up to $7,500 off a new car, and not all of the Tesla products qualified at first, and then there were changes to the supply chain and so on. Actually, Elon Musk has consistently said we shouldn't have these. Like, we don't have, you know, he's actually been consistently against those tariffs. So if for Musk, for Trump to come out and kind of go, you know, when actually, I mean, you can tell if you look at the receipt, you know, you can tell that Elon's been keeping receipts for everything that he's been saying, because you know, he's very quickly able to prove that he's got a track record for being pro, you know, removing these things. So
yeah, I think it's you know, they've put a lot of work in recently, to make sure that manufacturing has been more in the US. A lot of people, I think a lot of the reports that I saw, it's like, and I think Trump was mentioning, well, kind of leaning towards this, that, he went mad because the electric grants are, you're not going to get them anymore. I think he knew that was always going to happen, right?
Yeah, could be any question.
So Trevor, thanks for commenting, mate. Do I keep my Z4 Coupe manual, M Coupe or SI, or start looking for Mercedes EQC, or even start looking for a cheap depreciating Tesla? First of all, we need to know which Z4 it is, because I think that's very important. Very cool car. My friend used to have one. I personally wouldn't buy a Mercedes electric car because I think the range isn't that great, and they do have a few issues with motors, from what I hear. Tesla, mate, I just drove to Colchester and back, did about 4-hour round trip, and nice and cheap, fast charging, so smooth, loved it. And my car's done 126,000 miles. Can't go wrong. How was your drive today, Alex?
I've barely driven anywhere today, but my God, the drive yesterday, a few of us went off and had a curry after the show, and I drove from Chichester to Bognor Regis, and it was monsoon season stuff. I mean, the roads were flooded everywhere, and I mean, this car's like just off the floor. It's not an ideal car to go and turn into a boat. And then it's just lashed it down all weekend. So I think I'm probably going to have to take the boot carpet out and dry it separately from the car and things like that. So
what show you were at again?
We're Players Classic at Goodwood Motor Circuit, which is cool.
Yeah, some cool cars there, I take it.
Yeah, lots of real mix of stuff as well.
What, even electric cars?
No electric cars yet. But the new Rotiform advert's got an ID5 on it. So
really interesting. Yeah. Well, hopefully, Wedge will be out at some of these shows soon. That was the plan this year, but these things happen. So yeah, going back to the Trump and Elon debate, I think my main question was, obviously it's affected the shares quite a bit, understandably. I think Elon did put that thing up about the reason that Trump isn't putting the Epstein list out is because he's on it, and then apparently he's retracted that statement, I believe. But obviously it's not doing too good to the Tesla shares. But ultimately, how, with the feud with Trump, ultimately how much will it affect Tesla? I mean, I think a lot of people have commented so far that it might affect legislation for robo-taxi going through a lot smoother. Other than that, I don't really see it affecting him a huge amount. Although I know that Tesla are suffering a little bit in Europe from a sales point of view, but saying that, they're doing really, really well in Norway. They've had an absolute stonker, I think it is in May, with the new launch of the Y. Dean's put, Elon is my hero. Yes, he's a bit bonkers, but as a human species, we will look back at him in awe years to come. Tesla shareholder here, and I'm in the long game and will continue to be so. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if this was fortunate or not, but I actually sold half my Tesla shares at the start of last week. So I'm kind of happy that I did that at the time. But I think that they're probably just going to go back up again, to be fair, unless there's some massive delay with robo-taxi. But do you think it's going to affect Tesla shares and the Tesla company that much?
I don't know. I think perhaps Tesla's got swept up in a kind of a softening of the EV market. It's not a collapse but it's certainly a slowdown in sales generally. I mean, there is an issue with kind of people struggling with their finances at the moment and stuff, which is going to impact cars quite early on. But I don't see this hurting Tesla too badly. I mean, there's been a lot of kind of Tesla's been in the news a lot the last 6 months in terms of connections to Trump, favourable or non-favourable. Someone said the other day the only change will be that now if you get your Tesla keys, you won't know if it was somebody with a red cap on or somebody with or somebody with what did they say? Somebody with purple hair or someone in a bright red cap. You don't know. You won't know.
You just don't know. Well, there was talks that he was going to start a third political party, and I'm sure a lot of the people who are anti-Elon will be like, "Yeah, the Third Reich." Ha ha ha. Oh, sorry. Get rid of it's three lightning bolts now. We're all right. Okay, Trevor's just let us know that he's got an SI Z4. That was the sensible choice. And thanks. So, what electric car would you guys go for between 10 and 20k?
I wonder which one you'll suggest.
If it's not a Tesla, let's talk about this. Not a Tesla, okay? Because that's probably the best way of putting it. Hyundai Kona, Kia Niro. You can probably get a Polestar for that money. You probably get a Kia EV6 for that money. Hyundai Ioniq. Yeah, I would just stick to.
If you want something fun, I'd go EV6 or get one of the sportier EV6s. I don't know whether they're what price they come in at, and I can't multi-screen to check it at the moment. But
it'd be a high mileage one. But I don't think you need to worry about that.
Sorry,
I said it would be a high mileage one of between 10 and 20k, but I don't think you really need to worry about that. Because I think the Hyundai and Hyundai and the Kia batteries are pretty good, to be fair, from a battery degradation point of view. And this is quite just before we get back on the Tesla vibe again. Funnily enough, I saw James and Kate YouTube channel. So he's one of the main guys at Cleveland EV, does a lot of the mobile EV servicing and stuff. They recently did a once over an MG ZS and SUV electric MG. It done 240,000 miles, and the battery was still sort of 90%. In fact, we talked about it last week. Sorry to double on that one, but yeah, just to go through pricing, those are the cars that I would look at. Stick to the Korean and Chinese Tesla, and I mean you're not going to get a BMW for that kind of money, unfortunately. I can't. Is there anything else? Anything else that you reckon, Alex?
I mean, you could, for that money, you could get an early i3 and get the chap we had on a few weeks ago to fit a larger battery to it.
No. You don't buy an ID3 because
i3. An i3.
An i3. Yeah, that's right.
And then fit the bigger retrofit the bigger battery.
Yeah. Get I'm gonna pronounce his name wrong again, aren't I? Avidus to do the battery swap for you. But no, there's one with 90,000 miles, 77 kilowatt hour battery, EV6 Kia, 23 plate, 90k, 15.5 grand. That's a bargain, that is. There's even a GT line with 84,000 miles on it on a 23 plate for 17.5. So yeah, that's a good car, really. Although I did, someone who used to work with, he had a EV6 and he had loads of issues with it reliability wise. Really? I don't know if it's an early one, which is really, really odd, really. But yeah, one of them. Let's just go through the so hopefully that helps you out, Trevor. Dean, my favorite saying is Tesla isn't just a car company. Absolutely. Batteries, full self-driving, robots. So I'm not worried about Tesla car sales. If you're brave, some iPaces around 15, 20k. Yeah, but no one wants to be brave when they're spending 15, 20k, do they?
Especially when they're as iffy as they are at Jaguar seems to be at the moment.
Yeah. I would stay clear of iPaces. I think it's that age-old thing with JLRs. If you can get a good one, they're great, but not many are. But yeah, it'd be interesting. Yeah, like I said, going back to the Tesla debate here. So I think, is Trump going to make it hard? How could he make it hard for Tesla? I'm just trying to think, because I know that they're going to be really petty, aren't they? You can just see it a mile off.
So the Tesla, the robotaxi thing is a good shout. I mean, that's one of the things where the kind of the NHTSA stuff and to America you kind of self-certify, and then technology, you don't have the same kind of process of getting technology to market that you do in Europe. But then if the technology doesn't work, then NHTSA investigates you, and you can have all sorts of issues. Ford's had issues with what's it called, Blue Cruise, because they've recently had a couple of quite serious accidents involving Blue Cruise.
Really? I'm guessing Blue Cruise, that sounds a bit too much like Booze Cruise, is like autopilot then.
So it is. You can take your hands off the wheel with Blue Cruise, which is I'm not a fan of a lot of the assisted driving stuff because it is assisted driving and it gets oversold in terms of what it can do. And that's not just a Tesla thing with autopilot, that is across the board. I think a lot of these systems give a lot of confidence to the driver to, if you've got your hands off the wheel and you're not even steering, which you can do with Blue Cruise, and I've tried it, it'll let you do it on the motorway and you can just sit there with your hands in your lap. But if you have to sit there and you have to look at the road, your brain's going to just start wandering. And you have to be ready to take over, because the system will all of a sudden go, no, I can't do this bit of road, and it will hand control back. And it does it a lot.
How long can you not touch the steering wheel for on Blue Cruise?
It's not as long, ages. As long as you keep your eyes on the road. It's got a camera watching you, which Tesla doesn't have.
Yes, it does.
Tesla does now have
yeah, it's always had. Yeah, funnily enough, it gets. When I first had it, it wasn't too strict, but now it is pretty damn strict. So I think they've obviously tweaked it.
I get and stuff.
Yeah. It, like if I look down,
tells you off.
Oh yeah, it tells me off. Yeah, for sure. It's not like I'm not waiting for steering wheel or anything, but
Blue Cruise, and the issue with a lot of these systems is you do kind of need LiDAR to do it reliably, to be able to give you that high definition, long visibility. And nobody's really doing it. European or North American manufacturers, most people are not really doing that at the moment. They're launching these systems that depend largely on vision-based cameras and radars, which you can get away with a lot. It'll offer you quite a lot of functionality, but the trouble is that you run the risk of false positives, and this is where Ford's come unstuck, is that over 60 miles per hour it will ignore a stationary object in the road, which sounds horrendous, right? Because it kind of is, but the idea that as a human driver, if you were sat behind the wheel of a car doing 60 miles an hour, you would take over. But also, as it is, it's a driver monitored system. Like, you have to watch what it's doing, so you're liable if the car crashes. It's not taking control, and that gets into this horrific grey area. But NHTSA investigated it after there was a series of accidents, and they found out that the software was set up in such a way that if it detects it's basically to stop the car from just jamming on the brakes at 70 miles an hour because it thinks it's seen something in the road in front of it, which is dangerous as well. So yeah, I just think the whole thing at the moment, the tech, it needs another layer of technology on top of it to give you the level of functionality that we really need to get that reliable self-driving stuff. And we're not there yet. And it's not just Tesla. It gets reported about a lot with Tesla, but it's not just Tesla.
No, ghost braking. I've had that a few times. Always when my wife's in the car, ironically. Never when I'm in the car. Although I was driving past a car that was literally just on the hard shoulder and it didn't do it. I think it's the bridges, isn't it? The bridges it doesn't like. So
the issue going forward is going to be, so in the States, although there's a potential, because Trump's not only going after EVs, but he often goes after safety regs as well that he sees as being unnecessary. And there's a requirement coming through in the States by 2029 that you'll need to be able to sorry, I'm going off on one with all of this, but the regulation in the States that by 2029 cars will have to avoid collisions with pedestrians at night at quite a high speed. It's almost 40 miles an hour. Wow. And when I've talked to people about this, they said most cars these days are equipped with cameras and LiDAR, and it's hard to do that reliably with those two like sensors. So they said you'll end up with a situation where you potentially have a lot of false positives and or the risk of false positives, or where the car will not be happy to kind of try and do that. You'll have some advances in sensors and algorithms in the meantime, but it's going to be very hard to deliver that level of performance that's needed. So, but yeah, if going back to the point, the self-driving thing is something which the Tesla stock price is quite heavily hung on at the moment. There's a lot of kind of hype around robotaxi and so on, and that is one area where if Trump was being tactical, that's one area he could hit Elon quite hard with if he wanted to continue the feud.
It does feel like it will be a cut your nose to spite your face, because obviously they're, as an American company, a very, very big American company that are bringing in a lot of money and jobs and all the rest of it. I think you'd have to be very crafty to work it out how he's going to do that. And I think the robo taxi is probably the best shout of all. But I actually thought that they'd got it approved in Texas or Austin, or wherever it is. Yeah, Texas. and California. But I don't know if that's actually gone through. Does anybody know if that's been confirmed?
There's a lengthy process you have to apply for where you have, so they're called federal motor vehicle safety standards, and you have to apply for exemptions to those to use autonomous vehicles on the roads, because basically it removes certain requirements that you would need to legally have. So you have to apply for permits, and this can take years. So there is certainly scope to streamline some of the processes that allow this technology to be tested, but also at the same time, you could argue, well, if the technology isn't entirely ready yet, should we really be allowing people to do more and more and more with it? It's a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? I mean, how do you do that? How do you do that safely? And how do you make the technology safe without testing it on the road? You probably can't.
Yeah. This is my friend's argument, who works for JLR. He always says, oh, Teslas, they're tested on the road. They should be tested on the road. But saying that, JLR, they're tested and they just don't work on the road. So it's a bit harsh, but you know what I mean. Yeah, okay. What do you think? There's an opportunity here for China? Don't worry, Elon. Come over.
Well, maybe. I mean, he's already doing quite a lot in China, isn't he? I mean, I know some Teslas use BYD battery packs, don't they? So
yeah.
Of Tesla. I don't know which ones. I think it's certain variants for certain markets use BYD battery packs. So yeah, I mean, there is an opportunity on that. Possibly, I mean, from a self-driving point of view, I mean, China's miles ahead of everyone else in terms of the way that they do that. And a lot of Chinese manufacturers now are fitting LiDAR as standard, and they've got processes in place to kind of make sure that things are mapped properly and all the rest of it. They have got quite a commanding lead in terms of how they're using that technology. So yeah, but I mean, I think giving Elon the opportunity to hone that technology in China would be quite an interesting move.
I believe that Tesla have obviously come completely away from LiDAR, and I get an inkling that of course LiDAR is great in a lot of circumstances, but actually if you've got some good cameras and they're not blocked, obviously that's the kind of limitation, isn't it? As soon as the vision isn't as good, that's where the LiDAR comes in, right? So
it's not just, it's also the issue that they're getting in terms of RGB cameras, which is what Tesla's using, is that they kind of see like a human eye. So if anything is, if you're driving away from the sun and you're driving towards, say, the side of a lorry, and the lorry is reflecting a lot of sun back, the cameras can get dazzled in ways that LiDAR can't. Can't do fog. And they have various other issues that are to do with kind of, because they see things like a human eye. You can get around some of it with things like thermal imaging cameras and stuff that don't then require much more expensive LiDAR. LiDAR, the big issue is cost. They're hundreds of pounds to
they are a lot of money. Yeah, they seem to, like you said, it seems to be on all the Xiaomis and all the other Chinese vehicles. Looks like Aylen has got a question in here. What to look for when buying a used EV? I'm in between an MG5 long range or Model 3. I expected sellers to include a battery report in the ad, but maybe it's not that straightforward, especially with the MG. I wouldn't rely on a non-main dealer to supply a battery test. To be fair, I would definitely get one done, though. The Model 3 is easy to do for them to do. They just have to chuck it on a charger. The MG5 long range, there are ways that you can test the battery, but the problem is with the battery tests out there is if it's just a snapshot, plug it in to a USB port, that's only a very small snapshot of battery health. Ideally, you'd want to have it over a certain period of time, like while it's charging or while it's on load, because then you get a real picture of the battery. That's why I think the Tesla Model 3 report's very good, because it's obviously their own one, and it's going to go through the various checks. MG, I mean, they're great utilitarian vehicles, and I'm sure Alex will echo this, great all-rounders, but if you drive them both, you'll see the difference straight away. In practicality way, I mean, the Tesla Model 3 I think is super practical, and you can get roof bars for them and tow bars and that sort of thing. That's where the MG will win out, because it's got obviously the hatchback and the boot, but battery. Go on, mate.
Yeah, it's MG with the MG. was MG5 on it. Sorry, excuse me if I have to. I've had a long day. It's MG5 long range, wasn't it? So MG5 long range is not a massive. It's not a massive estate car. It's quite a small estate car within its class. It's not as big as, say, an Octavia or like an Astra or something like that, which I kind of assume. So. Sorry,
you don't think so? I think it's about the same size. They're
not as big. No, but they are. I mean, Cleveley will vouch for the fact that they go on and on and on and on. But yeah, you're dead right. I mean, in terms of kind of feeling like a finished car, a Model 3 is worlds apart from it. The MG5 is built to a price. It's a great car. It is a really good car, but it is rough around the edges. It's a tool for a job, and there's something quite charming about it. But also, it's quite basic, and it feels basic.
And Alan, I was in exactly the same predicament because I was looking at MG5 and MGZS, and then this high mileage Tesla Model 3 came along, and I'm so glad I bought that because I know every time I get into it, I'm like, nice. Whereas I know if I'd have bought the MG, I'd have sat in it and I'd have gone, no, not so nice. But again, if you're not a massive car person, you know, I would say just go and drive both of them. Long test drive. That's the best way to go for it. Then you can make a good decision from that experience. So Dean, thanks for chipping in, mate. Elon has already moved Tesla HQ from California to Texas because he wasn't happy.
Yeah,
that's a great point. He could move his HQ to abroad if restrictions are put in place. Progress. HQ now in Texas. Indeed, that seems to be the place to be, doesn't it? Texas and Austin and all the rest of it. You know, two of the biggest podcasts in the world out of that place, Joe Rogan and Bill Tony. That's what I like to listen to. Although I was listening to Sniff and Smith. I do love a bit of those guys are really good. If anybody doesn't watch or listen to their podcast, it's worth listening to. It just seems to be so much going on. Let's to keep it balanced, Alex, because I want this podcast to be, a bit more general, and I think people would appreciate this just to get that extra balance in. But what's actually happening in the kind of petrol car world now? It's everyone, all the manufacturers seem to be like kind of slowing down, and there's a bit more of a push towards hybrid. But what are you seeing out there, Alex? Because obviously you're the man with the master plan.
Layers. There's an awful lot going on in Europe and in the UK at the moment in terms of regulations and regulatory change, which is influencing the way that manufacturers are making model ranges. The hybrid push comes from a couple of different places. So Europe this year will move to I'll try and explain the acronyms as I go along. I'm hoping people know what NEDC is and what WLTP is, but I will quickly run through that. So NEDC was an old 1990s test cycle, and it was used to calculate efficiency and range. It would have been used to calculate as well. It was criticised for ages for just being wholly unrepresentative of real life driving, and it was changed for WLTP back in, I think, 2017. And what that then did is it meant that all vehicles were tested according to this new worldwide. It's a really long, worldwide harmonized light duty test procedure. So it's a higher load, longer test. It covers more scenarios and so on. Anyway, Europe has CO2 targets for all new cars with fines for not meeting them.
Yeah.
The actual CO2 target isn't changing this year, but they're changing from NEDC to WLTP. So effectively what that means is it's going to be harder for manufacturers. Did you catch that, or did it cut out?
Yeah, no, I caught it all, mate.
It'll be harder for manufacturers to hit their CO2 averages. And so for them, it makes a lot of sense for them to try and sell plug-in hybrids, which obviously bring that down. In the meantime, you've then got something called Euro 6e BIS. I don't know what BIS stands for, but it's the latest round of Euro 6. Sorry?
Sounds a bit like
Euro 6e BS is probably what the manufacturers are calling it at the moment. So that is the latest round of the Euro 6 emissions regulation. So these tend to govern things like pollutants and so on. But within this reform test is an adjustment to the way that CO2 is calculated. So your CO2 for plug-in hybrids will assume a much lower share of EV driving within the overall yearly average. So What that effectively does again is push up the CO2 of plug-in hybrids. Here's where things get really stupid, right? In the UK, because of Brexit, we don't actually have to have cars tested to Euro 6E. It is not part of the type approval process here. So you can sell a car here that only meets Euro 6D. But if you're a manufacturer and you're investing in adding, I mean, this is why you're starting to see a lot of plug-in hybrids with like 70, 80-mile ranges like the Volkswagen stuff. It's to keep, it's to counteract this Euro 6E regulation, basically.
Oh, okay. I did wonder why they started going big on the battery ranges.
So what you'll see is a lot of cars that will come out with much longer EV ranges, and you should see some coming out this year, but they've got until the end of the year to retest according to Euro 6E to sell in Europe. You don't have to do that in the UK, but in order, if you're releasing an updated model to keep it up with Euro 6E, why would you bother only testing to Euro 6D, which is less stringent, just to sell in the UK? It's not going to make any sense. So what you'll see is a lot of plug-in hybrids with much longer ranges, and also a focus on trying to sell those to kind of bring the CO2 averages down. So there's a lot going on in Europe and in the UK over the next year or so. I mean, the Euro 6E is a pain in the butt for plug-in hybrids in the UK because a lot of them are sold to company car fleets where they sell on CO2. You have two large thresholds at 50 and 75 grams per kilometre where you lose a lot of your tax advantages for having plug-in hybrids. So I think what that'll do is it'll start to make fleets think, well, actually, do we definitely need plug-in hybrids? And also you could have situations where you could order it, and between ordering and delivery that gets retested to this new standard and the CO2 goes up. So it's complete chaos, the whole thing. But there's going to be a lot of plug-in hybrid stuff to watch during the year. But yeah, the world of ICE is an interesting one. And also you've got ZEV mandate obviously in the UK, but tagged on to that, the other half of that is again CO2 targets for manufacturers in the UK for non-ZEVs. And if you beat those targets, you can count a share of that excess towards your ZEV mandate target. And it was originally only going to last for like 3 years, but that's now been extended to the end of the decade. So also manufacturers again in the UK have got a reason to sell more plug-in hybrids. So I just think that's going to be quite an interesting dynamic to watch over the next few months.
So ultimately, we're going to see a hell of a lot more plug-in hybrids, and any kind of pure electric, pure ICE cars are probably going to be the performance ones that they're going to sell in low volumes, right?
Yeah, I think we're going to start seeing things getting wound down. It's interesting. Someone was saying to me, and I haven't had a chance to check this, I think it's Ford have withdrawn the 4-cylinder diesel Ranger because they've now got a plug-in hybrid or the big 6-cylinder diesel. And the plug-in hybrid's got pretty good towing range and all the rest of it. So, and in the UK, obviously now you've got changes to, say obviously, like everyone's obsessed with tax, like I have to write about it all the time, but you've got changes to, so plug-in hybrids since April, that's not plug-in hybrids. So pickup, double cab pickup trucks. So you see a lot of those getting driven around on the road like normal cars. And the reason is that they get taxed like a company van, not a company car. So they don't get taxed on CO2. In most cases, you're looking at a 5 times higher tax bill and if you're a 20% tax, if you're a lower income taxpayer, that's a couple of £100 a month. It's big money. So Ford's right on the money with this plug-in hybrid, plug-in hybrid Ranger, and if they can get that in here in decent volumes, they're going to sell loads of those.
Because saying that, I mean there are 3 electric, maybe 4 soon, electric pickups. You've got the Isuzu have just brought them out. I think the realistic range on that is realistically 160 miles because it hasn't got a massive battery on it. The towing weight, it can tow up to 3.5 tons. But I think realistically, that's probably going to half, depending on what it's towing, of course, and the weight and the aero, probably put that down to 100, might even be 80 miles during the winter range. But then there's the Maxus e-Teron 9, which has got a much bigger battery. That does actually look but yeah, it does feel that there are certain circumstances, and I see it quite a lot, where electric isn't right. It's not going to be right probably for a couple of years still, even though they might have real strong targets to decarbonize and go for a BEV vehicle. But sometimes the technology isn't there yet. So plug-in hybrid is, I think, going to be a solution for a bit longer for people, well, for businesses that it doesn't quite work for, where there's, you know, real immediate response time that needs to be adhered to, you know, accidents, emergencies, etc. And also for people that don't have access to charging, because it is still very expensive out there. It just really annoys me. I think I saw, actually, that's another thing for the news, Believe, which I'm sure, has anyone ever used a Believe AC charger before? Apparently they've just got another, I think it was £300,000 for the government to improve infrastructure. But I don't think people are actually going to use it, because the cheapest one near me is 54 pence per kilowatt hour. And you must be bananas and very, very desperate, or not in that fortunate position where you need to have that charger there, which isn't ideal. Dean's just mentioned the newer Motor 9 is a FEV, comes with a 34 kilowatt hour battery. Massive. I don't know about you, you know, everyone on the, I was going to say call, everyone on the podcast today, but I see loads of motors about. I've sat in it. I didn't think that the quality was as good as the new MG5S, the replacement ZS, or as good as some of the other ones out there, but it seemed okay for the money. You sat, yeah.
The issue the Emoda had when I drove, so I did a launch event back in January or February. The issue I had with the Emoda is that they've tried to do two very different interiors. One for the sorry, I'm plugging my phone in. We've tried to do two very different interiors, so one for the petrol and one for the plug-in hybrids. And they've tried to do EV-like stuff with the plug-in hybrid, and I don't know why they've done it, because it's actually made the interior much worse. So the petrol one has got these kind of very chunky, like big chunky gear stick and a big chunky door handles and lots of kind of fake rivets on show. So it's actually quite nicely done for a, you know, to a price. But then the EV one's got like a kind of a column shifter, and it's got these little weird rocker switches for the windows, and they've got rid of a lot of the kind of the rugged stuff, and they've tried to make it feel more minimalist. And it's not as nice to use. It's a really strange decision, and it's the more expensive of the two vehicles. I mean, they're very cheap. I mean, it's kind of, you know, top spec is well under 40 grand. I mean, they're cheap enough that you could buy one as a retail customer, even if you're not getting any kind of company car tax benefits with it.
Yeah, and Emoda, if people didn't know, it's owned by Cherry. I think Cherry comes into the market soon as well.
Yeah.
So Trevor's just joined the chat again. I'm also looking at Cat S or Cat D cars, EVs. Would you guys stay clear or entertain it because of the cobwebs around my wallet? It's very tempting to get bargain. Alex, I'll let you go first, and I'll put in after that.
The category, you know, anything that's a category D or a category, so category N's the one. It used to be A, B, C, D, didn't it? The two, not the two that are basically uneconomical loss, as opposed to being something where it's like serious structural damage. I'm not against having that on a vehicle's record, but I think if it was a new vehicle, I'd be kind of more wary of it, because at that point it's had enough damage that it's overcome the value of quite a high value vehicle. That's where I'd be wary. But I mean, at the moment, repair costs are massive at the moment, and because there's delays on parts and so on, so the claims cost can be very high. So you can actually have cars where the damage isn't severe at all, but they get declared an uneconomical repair because the time taken to repair it and put somebody in a courtesy car and all the other stuff is just all adds on top of the repair costs and just makes it uneconomical to repair the car. So I'd want to know exactly what would happen to it, and I'd want to know, you know, because equally the other thing that you've got to bear in mind is that you can get a car that's completely clear history-wise, and it's had quite a serious accident, but because it had only got 100 miles on the clock, and they just repair it and put it back on the road. I mean, a family member had a 206 that had a really serious motorway collision, but the insurers paid out and repaired it because it was a relatively new car, and it was sold on as, you know, when we got rid of it, I mean, it was HPI clear. It didn't have any damage logged on it at all. And then you can have cars like my mate's old Vauxhall Astra where someone knocked the mirror off it, and it was declared a write-off by the insurance company because it was there was some slight damage to the door skin. I mean, it was nothing that you couldn't repair on your driveway,
but they just weren't prepared to repair it, because to them there's a process of managing it and putting it, you know, buying a brand new mirror and putting it through an approved workshop and giving them a courtesy car and all the rest of it. They just couldn't be bothered to deal with.
I echo exactly what you've just said, Alex, but also thinking about insurance. Insurance is more expensive for category cars. Also, you know, cheap things aren't nice things aren't cheap. And yes, maybe you can get a bargain of, you know, of vehicles that's been written off unnecessarily because of parts, and you can get maybe a used parts to add onto it. But like Alex said, you've got to really dig into the detail, know what you're doing. I personally would stay clear and just try and find a, you know, if you want a bargain, go for a high mileage electric car, which isn't a Nissan Leaf or Renault Zoe. Yeah, that's my thoughts on it. So yeah, I mean, it does seem like there's lots of stuff going on at the moment. There's so many EVs that I see on the road now. It really does feel like there's the tide of change going on at the moment. Even though it does feel that obviously there's going to be complete political change with, you know, I'm sure reform's probably going to get in next time. It'd be interesting to see how much, you know, that obviously they're going to reverse a lot of the net zero stuff. It'd be really interesting to see what progress will be made after that. Like it'd be interesting. I think, well, how many years have we got until reform would potentially get in? I know I'm looking into the future here. I'm saying that reform will definitely get in, but
so it could be another 3 years. I'm more optimistic about a lot of this stuff, because I kind of feel, if you look at the bigger picture, and this is another thing that I think with Trump and all the rest of it, is that, you know, Trump can be as anti-EV as he wants, but when you're dealing with like Europe, you know, car manufacturers in Europe soon are going to start phasing out combustion engines. So if you're an American consumer and you're buying, say, BMWs, how much longer are you going to be able to buy a petrol or diesel BMW?
Yeah,
they're going to start disappearing. So regardless of who's in charge, it's a bit like airbags and other bits and pieces like this that you get on modern cars now. I mean, people don't actively necessarily. I know buying an EV is a bit more of a step change than buying a car with or without an airbag, but I think it's just going to become more and more natural to just buy an EV, or at least a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid. So yeah. I'm more optimistic than most in terms of kind of how that pans out.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting to see what happens. It does feel like there's so much progress on the car world, but there's still those challenges still, whether it's, you know, power for big fleets or, you know, actual home charging for people. And I think
that's a whole other world, isn't it? That's the issue, I think, is getting people to switch out of vans. And if you've got a fleet of vans, diesel vans that work for you, and you saw this a little bit, not on a fuel front, but with Defenders, where people were stockpiling Defenders at the end of the production run. I think you could end up with a situation where if the EV stuff just isn't working for van fleets, and it will work really well for some and not for others, or where it kind of costs a lot more money to run them or whatever, you'll get people stockpiling diesel vehicles in like 2034, just to kind of make sure that they've got this, and they'll run them until they're falling apart.
Yeah,
really feel like progress to me.
But I suppose then there's the potential downtime if the vehicle's off the road a lot of the time. Yeah, you know, using fleet data, see if, you know, simulating it, making it work. Dynamon, enough said. Trevor, yeah, you meant Cat S and Cat N. You're going back in the old days of Cat D, Cat Dealy, as we used to call the Cat Ds. Dean has he popped in a message here. May 25 EV market share is at 22%, another 26% increase from May 24. Yet the press make it out no one wants EVs. No, you're absolutely right. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. There has been a massive increase in EV registrations for May. I think June's going to be pretty strong, and I personally think, I could be way out, but in the UK, I think the Tesla Model Y, the new one, I think there's going to be a lot about, because I've seen loads on the road already.
There's one of our, not, I wouldn't say neighbour, but they're on our blocks, got one, 25 in black. It's not a bad looking car actually in the metal. I think actually that front end would look even better if it was on the Model 3 than on the Model Y. I find the Model Y a little bit ungainly from the rear, particularly from the rear three quarters. It's quite high and quite tall. It looks like an upwardly stretched Model 3, but the way they've executed the lights and stuff, and I do like the way they've done it.
No, I like it. I mean, I've not driven it yet. I'm sure I'll get there at some point. I think if we do summarize the Tesla Trump war going on, I don't think it's going to affect Tesla too much. It'd just be really interesting to see what happens with the robo taxi and any other kind of legislation, whether there's any push to that. But saying that, if there's any pushback from Trump, he should just be able to go through the courts and go around it anyway. But yeah, have you got any kind of summary on that debate going on
at the moment? So there's a federal program that funds. It's distributed through the states, but it's managed federally, and it's money for charger installations, and a lot of it's already been kind of allocated to specific projects. It just hasn't been, because it's a rebate program. You don't get the money up front, so you have to then go back and apply for it. So states apply for it, and then people within the states apply for a bit of that money, and then the states distribute it to the people. So at the moment, the states will have that money from the federal government. In some cases, they will have given it to end users, in others they haven't. I know that Tesla's had some issues getting hold of that funding, and that program currently is on pause. But I think it's something like 20 odd states have sued the federal government for putting it on pause, because they're going, we've now got projects that have just halted because people don't know how much money they're going to get. And also starting to see now states and utility companies are starting to put their own programs in place, their own funding programs in place. Yeah. So there's all sorts of utility companies that will kind of put money towards like make ready schemes and stuff. The appetite, basically, the market is only going to grow. I've seen some quite pessimistic figures recently. I don't know if you keep an eye on and Bloomberg puts figures out, and the IEA puts figures out as well.
Right.
The IEA has halved its expectation for 2030, but then they're also still saying there's going to be 4 times more EVs on the road by that point. So the market's kind of only going to go in one direction, I think, at this point.
Yeah. I did see some things also about used EVs that prices are still coming down. I suppose, people that are traditionally buy a used car to save money won't necessarily have a driveway, and probably it kind of doubles. I'd be interested to see the data on that. Like, people that buy used cars, what's the percentage of people that buy used cars have got driveways? I'm guessing it's going to be less. I think that kind of makes sense. I think
there's going to be some charger sharing, and there's going to need to be more kind of hubs and local hubs and stuff that people can kind of use. I mean, I think obviously that is a challenge. The other issue that used EVs have had is obviously there's been a period for the last 18 months or so where there's been a lot of discounts put out to try and meet targets, and obviously that means that residual values are taking more of a hit than a lot of people were expecting them to take. So there's going to be people who are in the red on their PCP deals, and people who and leasing companies taking a bath on some of those deals, unless they priced that risk in initially.
Oh, something that's very important to note actually is I heard on the grapevine that there's certain finance companies out there that are not funding Porsche Taycans at the moment because of the issues around batteries. I'm not at liberty to say which finance companies, but I think that the majority of them will go that way. And when I did a little bit of research online, I think it's the early Taycan rather than the later one. Apparently there's a facelift or a later one. I've not seen a newer one, but I know that the Audi e-tron GT are they upgraded that, didn't they? So I'm guessing it's within the last year. So anyone that has got a Porsche Taycan or thinking about buying one, maybe just hold fire or get rid of it quick, because I think that's probably going to affect their used market even more. I think you can get them for about 45 grand now, Porsche Taycans.
Very cheap.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's got a Porsche Taycan on here. It'd be interesting to see what your experience is. But apparently, it's been issues with some of the modules. I think they're the LG modules, and I don't even know if my performance has got LG modules in or Panasonic ones now, because I've seen various interesting bits on that. But going back to why I mentioned about the ID3 not being a good car to buy is because those cars also have issues with their modules. So I don't know if that's a VW Porsche thing together there. Bear in mind, it could be the same modules or certainly from the same supplier. But yeah, something to certainly keep an eye on if you're thinking about buying one of those vehicles out of warranty, or if you own one out of warranty. I personally would just get rid of it. before it's common knowledge and prices get affected even more. But yeah, on the if anyone is thinking about buying a Tesla, I've had 3 people use my referral code, so thanks very much to all of those people. But yeah, it's in the description if people want money off if they're buying a Tesla. And yeah, what you got going on this week, Alex? Got any events going on?
My brain. I'm trying to think what's going on this week. Nothing particularly of note. I've got having had a weekend of being with the PVW guys. I'm writing up a feature for them tomorrow. And most of the rest of the week then is I've got a couple of features to write about autonomous vehicles and a bit more secret squirrel stuff at the end of the week. So a real mix this week.
Well, if anyone is going to company car in action, I'm hoping to be there on the 12th if they let me go, because you have to go through a clearance process to say whether you're allowed to go or not. So if anyone is thinking about going to company car in action, and that's at Millbrook in Bedfordshire, get to drive a load of different electric vehicles and vans, etc. So that'll be a good event.
I'm editor at large at Arrival magazine, so I'm not welcome. I know all the guys there well enough to kind of, and I used to work.
Our media, isn't it?
Yeah. So
yeah.
I think it would be awkward politically if I was kind of wandering around there, being that I work for Arrival magazine. But there we go.
No issues there. Not next weekend, but the weekend after. Is anybody going to the EV rally, which is the London to Brighton one? So Alex is going, and I know Kev's going. So they'll be going at a very efficient manner. I may be going. I still don't know yet. I really feel like I want to kind of plaster the Tesla in a particular brand name. So we'll see how that goes. But they've got a couple of weeks still. It's absolutely fine. That's why I went all the way to Colchester and back in one sitting to buy some wheels. But unfortunately, a little tip for people buying upgraded alloys for an electric car: make sure that the load rating is right, because they tend to be heavier. So make sure that not only the offset's right, the size is right, tires if they're on there, but also the load rating. Because I nearly bought these alloys, but on the back of the alloy, it will tell you the size of the wheel, the width of the wheel, the PCD, which is your stud pattern, etc., but also the load capacity. The load. And these particular wheels were like 680 kilograms, and a Tesla Model 3 has to have 750 or higher. Otherwise, you've got a much better chance of cracking them and all the rest of it. So a little tip there. So I did a 4-hour round trip journey for no reason. But it was good to get out of the house. And I actually quite enjoy just chilling on the motorway in the Tesla. So, yeah. Nearly 127,000 miles on Rusty now. So if anyone has got some nice alloy wheels for sale, 18s or 19s, ideally forged for under £1,000, let me know. That's me. Alex, you all good?
Yeah, I've got a long drive back. I've got to get I'm in Havant at the moment, as I say, so I've got about 2.5 hour drive home via a liquid charging stop on the way. So.
Slurp.
If I was in an EV, I could have sat here charging while I was on the phone to you, on the call to you. So,
well, there we go, mate. There we go. Live and learn. Thanks everyone for listening this week. Kev will be back with us next week. I'm sure he's got some interesting stories because he's been in the US. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what he's the US correspondent for next week for sure. But thanks for everyone for listening in, and we'll see you next week. And don't forget, it's on Spotify as well now, or X. Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye.
Bye.